The ship was called the Endless Wind. It was a military cruiser, long and silver, cutting through the black emptiness of space like a knife through water. Inside, 300 soldiers lived and trained and prepared for battles that might never come. They were proud warriors from a proud species. They had conquered planets. They had won wars. And for the past 6 weeks, they had been absolutely terrified of their passenger. Her name was, she was 19 years old, she was human. Commander stood in front of the security screens in his private quarters, watching the girl through the ship's cameras. She was in the library again, sitting cross-legged on a cushion that was far too large for her small body. She was reading something on a data pad, her dark hair falling across her face. Every few minutes, she would push it back behind her ear. She looked so harmless, so soft, so breakable. Knew better. He pulled up her file for the 100th time. The words glowed on his screen, and he read them again even though he had memorized every line. Species human, Earth, gravity index 1 standard units. That number haunted him. They had a gravity index of 0.6. Most civilized planets in the galaxy ranged between 0.4 and 0.7. Earth was a monster world, a crushing ball of rock and water where everything was pulled down with terrible force. And humans lived there. They ran there. They jumped and played and called it normal. The file continued. Average human bone density 3 times standard. Muscle fiber efficiency extraordinary. Cardiovascular endurance unprecedented among known species. Predator ancestry confirmed. Closed the file and looked at the screen again. Had put down her data pad. She was eating now, pulling food from a small bag she carried everywhere. They called them death snacks when she was not around. Each bar she ate contained enough energy to keep a soldier running for an entire day. She ate 3 of them before lunch without even thinking about it. The door behind slid open. He turned to see one of his youngest and strongest soldiers walking in with a confident stride. Commander said, "You wanted to see me." "Yes," gestured to the screen. "What do you see?" Looked at the image of, he laughed, a short and dismissive sound. "I see a small girl reading books. Why should I be worried?" "You have read her species file." "I have glanced at it." "Glanced?" His voice was flat. "I have watched you lift boulders with your bare hands. I have seen you fight beasts twice your size and win. You are one of the strongest soldiers on this ship." Straightened with pride, "Thank you, Commander." "That girl could kill you with her fingers." The pride faded from his face. He looked at the screen again, his 4 arms crossing over his chest. "Surely you exaggerate." "I do not." Walked closer to the screen, watching turn a page on her data pad. "Her people evolved on a world that would crush us. Their bodies are built to survive impossible pressure. Their muscles are dense beyond anything we can achieve. And the worst part," he turned to look at directly, "she does not know she is dangerous. To her, she is ordinary, average, perhaps even weak compared to other humans." Was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "She has been on this ship for 6 weeks. She has hurt no one. She smiles at everyone she meets. She even tried to learn our greeting rituals." "And that is what makes her so unsettling," said. "She is kind. She is gentle. She has no idea what she could do if she wanted to. Imagine a creature that could tear through metal with its bare hands but thinks this is not special. Imagine a predator that has forgotten it is a predator." On the screen, finished her snack and stood up. She stretched her arms above her head and watched the easy way she moved. There was no effort in her body, no strain. Everything she did looked effortless because to her, everything was. The ship's communication system crackled to life. A voice filled the room, urgent and sharp. "Commander to the bridge. Emergency transmission incoming." Turned away from the screen and walked quickly toward the door. Followed. They moved through the silver corridors of the ship, passing soldiers who stepped aside and saluted as they went. The bridge was at the front of the vessel, a wide room filled with screens and controls and officers working at their stations. "Report," commanded as he entered. A young officer looked up from her console. "We have received a distress signal from the planet. There has been an earthquake at a sacred site called the Tomb of Ascension. Over 200 pilgrims are trapped inside. The main entrance has collapsed." Studied the map that appeared on the central screen. Was a small world, rocky and cold, known mostly for its ancient religious sites. The Tomb of Ascension was one of the oldest structures in that sector of the galaxy. "How far are we?" he asked. 4 hours at maximum speed. We are the closest vessel." "Then we go," turned to his crew. "Prepare a rescue team, 12 soldiers, full equipment." The bridge burst into activity. Officers sent commands, prepared equipment, calculated routes. Watched them work, his mind already planning the mission ahead. He did not notice when the library door on the security screen slid open. He did not see step into the corridor and begin walking toward the bridge, her small feet making almost no sound on the metal floor. But when she appeared at the entrance to the command center, everyone noticed. The room went quiet. Soldiers turned to look at the human girl standing in their doorway, her dark eyes curious and bright. "I heard there was an emergency," said. Her voice was soft and friendly. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Looked at her for a long moment. Part of him wanted to say no. Part of him wanted to keep her locked safely in her quarters where she could not accidentally destroy something. But another part of him, a small and practical part, whispered a different thought. If the entrance was truly collapsed, if heavy stone blocked the way, perhaps having a human nearby was not such a terrible idea. "You may join us," he said finally. "Stay close, do not wander." Smiled, and the expression was so warm and genuine that several soldiers found themselves smiling back before they could stop themselves. "Thank you, Commander," she said. "I promise I will be careful." Nodded and turned back to his duties. He wondered, not for the first time, if careful meant the same thing to humans as it did to everyone else. The planet looked like a wound in space. Brown and gray and covered in cracks, it hung in the darkness like something old and forgotten. The endless wind descended through thin clouds of dust, its engines roaring against the weak atmosphere. Pressed her face to the observation window and watched the ground grow closer. She could see mountains in the distance, sharp and broken. She could see valleys filled with shadows. Everything looked empty and cold. "It is not a beautiful world," said a voice beside her. She turned to see standing nearby, his 4 arms folded across his chest. He was tall like all, with pale skin and dark eyes that seemed to hold no warmth. But his voice was not unkind. "Every world is beautiful in its own way," said. "This one looks like it has stories to tell." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Stories of earthquakes and death, perhaps, is unstable. The ground shakes often here. That is why the pilgrims built their tomb deep into the mountain. They believed the stone would protect them. And now the stone has trapped them." "Yes," looked out the window. "The universe has a sense of humor, it seems." The ship landed with a gentle thump, followed the soldiers as they gathered their equipment and moved toward the exit ramp. She noticed how they looked at her when they thought she was not watching. Their eyes were curious and nervous and something else she could not name. Fear, perhaps, but that made no sense. What was there to fear about her? The ramp lowered, and cold air rushed into the ship, shivered and pulled her jacket around her body. They did not seem to notice the temperature at all. Commander led them across the rocky ground toward a structure built into the side of a mountain. The Tomb of Ascension was enormous, carved from black stone that seemed to drink in the light. Pillars rose on either side of the entrance, covered in symbols that did not recognize. Once, this place must have been magnificent. Now it was a disaster. The main gate had collapsed inward, a massive slab of metal and stone wedged at an angle that blocked the entire entrance. Cracks spread across the walls like spider webs. Dust hung in the air, thick and choking. An old stood near the entrance, his body wrapped in robes the color of dried blood. His skin was wrinkled and pale, and his eyes were milky with age. But when he saw the soldiers approaching, he straightened his back and lifted his chin. "Commander," the old one said, "I am elder keeper of this sacred place. Thank you for coming." "Tell me the situation," said. Turned to look at the blocked entrance. The earthquake struck without warning. The gate fell inward and sealed the main chamber. Over 200 pilgrims were inside, praying at the altars of ascension. They are still alive. We can hear them calling through the stone, but the air inside is failing. The filtration systems were damaged in the collapse. "How much time do they have?" 6 hours, perhaps less. Nodded and turned to his soldiers. "We begin immediately, form lifting teams, find any weakness in the structure, move." The soldiers spread out around the fallen gate, watched them work, fascinated by how their 4 arms moved in perfect coordination. They examined the stone, tested the metal, searched for any gap or crack they might use. There was none. The gate had fallen perfectly flat against the entrance, sealing it completely. Walked slowly toward. His ancient eyes studied her face, her body, her strange, small form. She smiled at him politely, and he took a step backward. "You are human," he whispered. "I have read about your kind in the old texts." "Good things, I hope," said. Did not answer. He simply stared at her, his expression impossible to read. Approached the gate and placed his hands against it. He pushed, and the muscles in his arms bulged with effort. The gate did not move, not even a little. "It is too heavy," he called out. "We need multiple lifters." 6 soldiers positioned themselves around the gate. They found handholds in the twisted metal, braced their bodies against the ground and prepared to lift. Counted down from 3, and they all pushed together. Heard them grunt with effort. She saw the strain on their faces, the way their legs trembled and their arms shook. For a moment, she thought she saw the gate shift slightly, rising a tiny amount from the ground. Then it crashed back down, and the soldiers stumbled away, gasping for breath. "Again," commanded. They tried again, and again. Each time the gate barely moved. Each time they fell back exhausted. Sat down on a nearby rock and watched. She understood now why the soldiers seemed so tired. This gravity felt light to her, almost playful, but to thee it was normal. They were working at the limit of their strength. She thought about her home. She thought about Earth, where everything was heavier. She remembered playing with her sister in their backyard, throwing rocks and climbing trees, and never thinking about how hard those things might be. Was the strong one in their family. She had won medals in sports, had lifted weights at the gym, had always been the one people called impressive. Was just ordinary, average, nothing special. The soldiers tried to lift the gate once more. This time, it did not move at all. Fell to his knees, his 4 arms hanging limp at his sides. His breathing was heavy and harsh. "It is impossible," he said. "The weight is too much." Elder pressed his hands together in prayer. His lips moved silently, forming words that no one else could hear. From somewhere deep inside the tomb, thought she heard voices calling out. The pilgrims, the trapped ones, crying for help that might never come. Commander stood in front of the gate, his expression hard and cold. Could see him thinking, calculating, searching for any solution he had not yet tried. She wanted to help. She wanted to do something, but what could she do? She was not a soldier, she was not even that strong by human standards. She was just a student, a passenger, a small girl very far from home. The wind blew across the rocky ground, carrying dust and cold. Inside the tomb, 200 people waited to die. Hours passed. The pale sun moved slowly across the gray sky, casting long shadows over the broken tomb. And still the gate did not move. Commander had tried everything. He had ordered his soldiers to work in shifts, rotating fresh bodies into the lifting positions every 15 minutes. He had sent teams to search for other entrances, other ways into the mountain. There were none. He had called for heavy equipment from the ship, but the machinery they carried was designed for repairs, not excavation. It was useless here. The gate was 40 tons of solid metal alloy, fused with ancient stone that had been sealed by the earthquake. It was a wall of impossible weight, and it was killing everyone on the other side. Watched the soldiers struggle. She had been sitting on the same rock for 3 hours now, her legs pulled up to her chest, her arms wrapped around her knees. She felt useless. She felt small. The feelings were familiar. She had felt them many times before back home, standing next to her sister. Would know what to do, always knew what to do. A group of soldiers made another attempt. They positioned themselves carefully, their 8 arms working together, their bodies straining with effort. Could see the veins standing out on their necks. She could hear their breath coming in sharp, painful gasps. The gate rose 3 centimeters, just 3. Then it crashed back down and 2 of the soldiers collapsed onto the ground. Pushed through the group and took his position at the front. His face was twisted with determination. His pride had been wounded by his earlier failures, and he was determined to prove himself. He was the strongest. Everyone said so. If anyone could move this gate, it should be him. He planted his feet on the ground and pressed all 4 of his hands against the cold metal. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he pushed. Had never seen anything like the effort he gave. Every muscle in his body seemed to come alive at once. His arms shook violently. His legs trembled so hard that she thought they might break. A scream tore from his throat, raw and desperate, as he threw everything he had against the gate. Nothing happened. Pushed harder. His scream became a roar. The other soldiers stepped back, giving him room, watching in awe and horror as one of their greatest warriors fought against an enemy that could not be defeated. Still nothing. His legs gave out. He fell forward, his face slamming against the metal gate. He slid down slowly, leaving a smear of sweat on the cold surface, and crumpled into a heap on the ground. He did not get up. 2 soldiers rushed forward and carried him away from the gate. They set him down gently on a flat stone, and one of them pressed a water container to his lips. Drank weakly, his eyes staring at nothing, his spirit as broken as his body. Commander walked to the gate and pressed his hand against it. His face showed no emotion but could see something in his eyes, something heavy, something dark. He was giving up. "Contact the ship," he said quietly. "Tell them we need heavy excavation equipment. Tell them to request it from the nearest station." "Sir," said one of his officers, "the nearest station is 14 hours away." "I know. The pilgrims only have 6 hours of air, perhaps less now." "I know." His voice cracked slightly on the second word. He closed his eyes and stood very still, his hand still pressed against the gate that refused to move. "I know." Elder approached the commander slowly, his ancient body moving with painful care. He placed a wrinkled hand on his arm. "You have done what you can," the old one said. "The ancestors will understand. Sometimes even the greatest warriors cannot defeat the mountain." Did not respond. He simply stood there frozen, unable to accept what was happening. Felt something twist in her chest. It was a feeling she knew well. It was the feeling of watching people suffer and being unable to help. It was the feeling of being small and weak and useless. She had felt it when her grandmother was sick. She had felt it when her father lost his job. She had felt it every time her sister succeeded at something and she failed. But this time, something was different. She looked at the gate. She looked at the soldiers who had exhausted themselves trying to lift it. She looked at Elder with his prayers and Commander with his silence and with his broken pride. And she thought about something her sister had told her once, a long time ago. Had said, "You always think you are weak, but you are not weak. You are just comparing yourself to the wrong people." At the time, had not understood. She had laughed and changed the subject and forgotten about it. Now, sitting on a rock on an alien planet, Watching alien soldiers fail to move a gate that trapped alien people, she finally understood. She was not comparing herself to the wrong people anymore. Reached into her pocket and pulled out a snack bar. She unwrapped it slowly and took a bite, chewing thoughtfully. The soldiers stared at her with exhausted eyes. One of them whispered something to another, and they both looked away, shaking their heads. She did not blame them. She knew how she must look. A small girl eating a snack while people died on the other side of a wall. It must seem heartless. But she was not being heartless. She was thinking. She finished the snack bar and stood up. She brushed the crumbs from her jacket. She looked at the gate one more time, studying its shape, its position, the way it was wedged against the stone. Then she began to walk forward. Commander turned to look at her. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Human," he said, "what are you doing?" Did not stop walking. She did not even slow down. "I am going to try something," she said. "Please step back." No one moved. They all just stared at her, too tired and too confused to understand what was happening. Stopped a few meters from the gate. She looked at it carefully. She had never done anything like this before. She did not know if she could do it now, but she had to try. Because on the other side of that wall, 200 people were running out of air. The wind stopped blowing. The dust settled. The entire world seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what the human girl would do. Stood in front of the gate, her small body casting a shadow that barely reached the base of the massive structure. She looked so tiny compared to the wall of metal and stone. She looked like a child standing before a giant. Commander opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Something in his mind was screaming at him to stop her, to pull her away from the gate before she hurt herself. But something else, something deeper and older, told him to wait, told him to watch. He remembered the files, he remembered the numbers, bone density, muscle fiber, gravity index. He remembered what humans were. "Everyone," he said quietly, "move back." The soldiers looked at him in confusion. Some of them laughed nervously, thinking he was making a joke, but his face was deadly serious. "I said move back now." They obeyed. The 12 soldiers of the military, exhausted and broken, stumbled away from the gate. They formed a loose half-circle behind, watching her with tired eyes. Elder did not move. He stood frozen near the entrance, his ancient hands clasped together, his milky eyes fixed on the human girl. He was whispering something under his breath, a prayer perhaps, or a warning. Had managed to sit up on his stone. He watched with a mixture of confusion and anger. He had given everything he had, and it was not enough. Now this small creature thought she could succeed where he had failed. It was insulting. It was impossible. It was about to become reality. Took a deep breath. She could feel her heart beating steady and slow in her chest. She could feel the ground beneath her feet, light and easy, almost like walking on the moon. She had felt this way before many times, but she had never paid attention to it. On Earth, everything was heavy. Every step was a fight against gravity. Every movement required effort that she had never thought about because she had never known anything different. Here on this small and broken planet, she felt like she was floating. She looked at the gate. It was tilted at an angle, wedged between the floor and the ceiling of the entrance. She could see the stress points, the places where the metal had bent and the stone had cracked. She did not know how she could see them. She just could. There, near the bottom left corner, that was the weak point. That was where she needed to hit. She started walking. His eyes went wide. She was not bracing herself. She was not preparing for a massive effort. She was just walking toward the gate like she was going to open a door. "Human," he called out, "what are you?" Did not hear him. She did not hear anything except the blood rushing in her ears and the steady rhythm of her own footsteps. She was 3 meters away, then 2, then 1. She did not stop walking. She did not slow down. She simply lifted her right leg mid-stride and kicked. The sound was like nothing any of them had ever heard. It was thunder and earthquake and explosion all at once. It was the scream of metal being torn apart and the roar of stone being shattered into dust. It was the end of the world compressed into a single moment of pure, devastating force. The gate did not just move. It did not just shift or fall. It exploded inward. 40 tons of solid alloy ripped from its frame like paper being torn from a book. It flew through the air, tumbling end over end, crashing against the floor of the tomb with a sound that shook the entire mountain. It slid across the ancient stone, leaving deep gouges in its wake, until it finally came to rest nearly 30 meters inside the structure. Dust billowed outward in a massive cloud. It swept over the soldiers, over everyone standing near the entrance. For a moment, no one could see anything. No one could breathe. Coughed and waved her hand in front of her face. "Sorry," she said, her voice slightly embarrassed. "Was that too hard?" No one answered. No one could answer. No one had words for what they had just witnessed. Stared at the empty space where the gate had been. His mind was completely blank. He had seen the files. He had read the numbers. He had thought he understood what humans were. He had understood nothing. Was on his feet, though he did not remember standing. His mouth hung open. His 4 arms dangled at his sides like dead things. He had spent his entire life training to be strong. He had lifted boulders. He had wrestled beasts. He had believed he was powerful. Now he knew the truth. He was nothing. Compared to this small girl, he was nothing at all. Elder fell to his knees. His ancient body hit the ground hard, but he did not seem to notice. Tears were streaming down his wrinkled face. His lips moved, but no sound came out. From inside the tomb, voices began to rise. The pilgrims had heard the crash. They had seen the gate explode past them. And now they were running toward the light, toward the entrance that had been sealed, toward the impossible opening that had appeared out of nowhere. They poured out of the tomb in a flood of bodies, gasping and crying and laughing all at once. 200 people who had been waiting to die were suddenly, miraculously, alive. One of them, a young woman with tears on her face, ran straight to and wrapped her arms around her. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Hugged her back gently, being very careful not to squeeze too hard. "It is okay," she said softly. "You are safe now. Everyone is safe." More pilgrims surrounded her, touching her arms, her shoulders, her hair. They spoke in rapid, their voices overlapping, their words tumbling over each other. Did not understand everything they said, but she understood enough. They were calling her a savior. They were calling her a miracle. They were calling her a gift from the stars. She wanted to tell them that she was none of those things. She wanted to explain that she was just an ordinary girl from an ordinary family, that her sister was the strong one, that she had never done anything special in her entire life. But when she looked at their faces, at the joy and the wonder and the absolute belief in their eyes, she could not find the words. Maybe, she thought, ordinary meant something different out here. Commander finally found his voice. He walked forward slowly, his legs unsteady, his eyes still fixed on the destruction had caused. When he reached her, he stopped and looked down at her small face. "Human," he said, "what you just did." "I kicked it," said simply. "I saw where it was weak and I kicked it." "You kicked it?" "Yes." Was quiet for a long moment. Then, for the first time since had met him, he smiled. "Yes," he said, "I suppose you did." Behind them, the pilgrims continued to stream out of the tomb. Above them, the pale sun have continued its slow journey across the sky. And somewhere in the distance, the mountain stood silent, watching the small girl who had done the impossible. Looked at the dust on her shoes and sighed. The video spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. It was only 30 seconds long. The footage was grainy and shaky, captured by a soldier's personal recording device. But those 30 seconds contained something that would change the way the universe looked at humanity forever. The video showed a small girl walking toward a massive gate. She did not stop. She did not slow down. She simply lifted her leg and kicked. And then the gate was gone. Within 6 hours, the video had been viewed over 2 billion times. Within 12 hours, it had been translated into 400 languages and shared across every major communication network in known space. Within 24 hours, it had become the most discussed piece of media in galactic history. Scientists analyzed it frame by frame. They calculated the force of the impact. They measured the speed of the gate as it flew through the air. They ran the numbers again and again, hoping they had made a mistake. They had not made a mistake. The human girl had generated enough force to level a building. She had kicked through 40 tons of metal like it was cardboard, and she had done it casually, mid-stride, without even breaking her walking rhythm. Military leaders across a dozen star systems called emergency meetings. They pulled up everything they had on humans. They read the files. They studied the data. And for the first time, they truly understood what they were looking at. Humans were not soft. Humans were not weak. Humans were monsters wrapped in friendly skin, predators who had forgotten their own power, beings from a nightmare world of crushing gravity and endless violence. And the galaxy had been inviting them to visit. On the endless wind, Commander received 17 urgent messages from High Command in a single hour. They wanted reports. They wanted explanations. They wanted to know why he had allowed a human to destroy sacred property. He ignored them all. Instead, he sat in his quarters and watched the video again. He watched walk toward the gate. He watched her lift her leg. He watched 40 tons of metal explode like it was nothing. And he smiled. The door chimed, and he called for it to open, walked in slowly, his body still recovering from his earlier exhaustion. He stood in front of his desk and did not speak for a long moment. "I owe you an apology, Commander," he finally said. "You warned me about the human. I did not listen." "You were not the only one who did not understand," said. "I read the files many times, and I still did not truly believe. It is one thing to see numbers on a screen. It is another thing to see a small girl kick down a mountain." "She is not small," said quietly. "She only looks small. Inside, she is larger than any of us." Nodded. "What will you do now?" Took a deep breath. "I will go to her. I will bow before her and offer my respect. Among my people, this is the highest honor a warrior can give." She may not understand the gesture. "Then I will explain it to her," turned toward the door, then paused. "Commander, may I ask you something?" "Yes." "Do you think there are more like her on Earth?" Thought about the question for a long time before answering. "According to our records, there are 8 billion humans on Earth. Believes she is ordinary among them. She believes her sister is the strong one." Was silent for a moment. Then he shook his head slowly and walked out of the room. He found in the ship's observation deck, sitting in front of the large window that looked out into space. She was eating another snack bar, her legs swinging slightly as she chewed. When she saw approaching, she smiled and waved. "Hello," she said. "Are you feeling better?" Stopped a few meters away from her. Then, very slowly, he lowered himself to his knees. He bent forward until his forehead touched the floor. He spread all 4 of his arms out to the sides, palms up, in the traditional gesture of complete submission. Stared at him in confusion. "What are you doing?" "I am offering you the warrior's respect," said, his voice muffled by the floor. "It is the highest honor my people can give. It means that I recognize you as greater than myself. It means that I would follow you into any battle against any enemy without question or hesitation." "But I did not do anything special," said. "I just kicked a door." Lifted his head and looked at her. His eyes were serious and deep. "Among my people, I was considered one of the strongest. I trained my entire life. I pushed my body beyond its limits, and that door defeated me completely." He paused, searching for the right words. You did not train. You did not struggle. You walked up to the thing that broke me and you kicked it open like it was nothing. That is not ordinary. That is beyond anything I can understand. Was quiet for a long moment. She looked down at the snack bar in her hand, then out at the stars filling the window. On Earth, she said slowly, I am the weak one in my family. My sister is the strong one. She wins medals and lifts weights and everyone says she is amazing. I am just average. If you are average, said, then I am afraid to meet the strong ones. Laughed. It was a small, soft sound, but it filled the observation deck like music. She reached out and touched his arm gently. Please get up, she said. You do not need to bow to me. We are friends now. Friends do not bow to each other. Rose slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. Friends, he repeated as if testing the word. I think I would like that. They stood together in front of the window, looking out at the infinite darkness of space. Somewhere out there, 8 billion humans were going about their ordinary lives, completely unaware of the fear and wonder they inspired in the hearts of everyone who had seen the video. And somewhere on, Elder sat in his damaged temple, writing a new chapter for the sacred texts. His old hands trembled as he pressed the stylus to the page. He wrote slowly and carefully, choosing each word with great thought. In the year of the broken earth, he wrote, the sky people sent their daughter to save us. She was small in body but great in spirit. She walked through our despair without fear. She struck down the wall of death with a single blow. He paused, thinking of face, her smile, her gentle words, the way she had apologized after destroying 40 tons of metal with her foot. We asked her if she was a warrior. She said she was ordinary. We asked her if she was a hero. She said she was just a student. We asked her how she found such strength. She said her sister was the strong one. Set down his stylus and looked at what he had written. It was not enough. It would never be enough to describe what he had witnessed, but it was a beginning. At the bottom of the page, he wrote one final line. The humans do not know what they are, and perhaps that is why they are so terrifying. They carry thunder in their legs and lightning in their hands, and they call it ordinary. They could destroy worlds, and they choose to save them instead. He closed the book and pressed it to his chest. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the endless wind continued its journey toward the next star. Inside, a small girl from a heavy planet ate her dinner and laughed at a joke she did not quite understand. And the galaxy watched her, breathless and afraid and filled with wonder. Because now they knew the truth. Humans were not prey, humans were not weak, humans were not safe. Humans were something else entirely. And they were just getting started. She was going to need a new pair of sneakers. And was done feeling useless. And the gate did not move. He suspected it did not.